Hello and welcome back to the podcast, We Are Selling. My name's Lee Woodward, the author of the Complete Salesperson course. Today's podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Nexar. Nexar is a dedicated real estate platform specialising in lead generation and database management of the entire real estate company for BDMs and agents working as one platform to generate opportunity. Nexar seamlessly integrates into your business systems, allowing you to have an extended solution. Let's get started with this week's episode. And welcome back to the podcast, We Are Selling. Today, we are crossing to Brisbane, where we're going to speak to a very well-known real estate professional, but I'm going to take us down a different angle of the interview. But joining me today for the first time for me doing an interview directly is Mr. Daniel Lee. Daniel, welcome aboard.
Thank you, good sir. Lee Woodward, one of my all-time favorite greats in real estate. You know, I grew up. I was in my early 20s at the time, but I started my career listening to Real Estate Hot Topics with you and John McGrath and all the guests you had on there. And it used to be in CD format back then. That's showing my age.
It was.
And I used to have this dodgy little Toyota Corolla that I'd drive around in as a sales associate. And I listened to those CDs over and over again. I couldn't wait for the next series to come out every year. And I honestly learned all my scripts and dialogues from that stuff. It was absolutely amazing. So you were always a little secret hero of mine. So now to be sitting here doing an interview with you, 17 years later from there is pretty special.
Well, thank you for that. And Real Estate Hot Topics was one of my favourite parts of my career. It's one of those parts as a speaker where you are forced to listen. And we did over 2,000 agent interviews on that program and some incredible guests over the years. But you're right, the CD would come out, everyone would whack it in the stacker, whereas today there's a million podcasts out by 1 o'clock and anyone can do a podcast. But the barrier of entry back then was you had to go into real studios, you needed mobile studios. But still today, that has been our marketing sticky, the reason why people stick with our education and what we do. And great to see you, one of our listeners out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And sure, there is a lot of content out there, but it's finding the best content, which is a good mission for people. And I think you have always been one to provide some of the best education in real estate. So I'm hoping that I can share some value that I've learned over the years today.
Well, just for our international listeners that don't know who you are, especially from the UK and the States, take us into the world of Daniel Lee. I know you came into real estate at 23, exploded onto the circuit, did well like so many young people coming through who didn't know what they didn't know, but just did it different. But give us your background.
Sure. I'll try and keep it short. So I started off in sales. I was one of those guys who, at the shopping center, when you're walking through and there's a guy with a little stand, he might be selling World Vision or Life raffle tickets or something. You don't want to make eye contact with these people, right? Because they're going to stop you and try and sell you something. I was one of those guys. And so I started out in this cold face selling, and I had to sell like home phones and internet and mobile phones on the spot, commission only sales role. That job, as awful as it was one of the best things I could have done in my career because it taught me the power of rejection,
yes,
and the power of numbers, and how, we had to stop every single person because we had to work our numbers every day. We knew that if we stopped 100 people, we could do 50 presentations, and of 50 presentations, we could get 20 closes. And then of the 20 closes, we actually might get 4 agreements signed. Those agreements were worth $100 each or something like that. So it was all around numbers. Every day we had to come in, we had to do training, and we had to hand in our sheet at the end of the day with how many people we stopped, how many we presented, how many we tried to close, and then how many signed. So I worked that job for about 6 months before I got into real estate. And when I got into real estate, I took the same mentality that, this is sales too. It's all about numbers. But it was just figuring out how do you use the same theory in real estate. And it came down to appraisals and relationships that you could build. So I learned that fairly quickly with the mentor that I had. You know, I was taught we need to build pipeline, we need to do appraisals for people, and we need to build these relationships because that's how you get listing opportunities. So I was just all into it. I went all in on the cold calls. And because I'd had that, 6 months of relentless beatdowns in shopping centers, I had absolutely no problem picking up the phone and just dialing number after number after number and just having as many conversations as I could and trying to get my foot in the door. Every appraisal I got was a massive win, and I just had targets that I had to hit every month. And I did really well as a sales associate doing that and saw the listings start to come in after 6 months or so. And so when I graduated to be an agent on my own, I knew that that's all I needed to do was really focus on building that pipeline, and that one day that would, come back to serve me. And it certainly did over the many years that I was a real estate agent.
So when you actually did go out solo, after doing all that groundwork, claiming doors, starting the relationships, doing the grind of what it takes, people think today, and we'll talk about this, digital can just skip that. Whereas more than ever, we're seeing a lack of connection from agents who don't understand connections. What was your best listing stream once you became a standalone agent and you were able to make those decisions of what you would invest your time in?
The best listing stream was always the database. Okay. And from my numbers that I've worked out, and I do this in training sessions all the time, 50% of any agent's listings come from their database that they actively nurture. The rest of the listings that you get are catch and kill type listings. So they're the buyer that you meet at the open home that you manage to have a conversation with that you've never met before you had this listing, and you get through their home and you eventually list that property. Or it's the buyer who buys the home and then you sell that house. Or it's the neighbor that calls you off the signboard to find out what that house sold for and you end up getting through that property's house. Or it's the letterbox drops you do and then you get a call back from those.
So Daniel, the database was your nurturing pot. You built your own pond. That's where the listing stream comes from. And I agree with you. A lot of people will say to me, oh, Lee, but I get 80% of the ones I go for. No, you get 80% of the ones of the people who know who you are. There's a lot of business going on around you and they don't even know who you are and you didn't know who they were, which completely changes this opportunity ratio of how real estate works. Daniel, my next question for you. You progressed on to be that leading agent. Today, you're in a very different position. And again, I'll do a bit of then and a bit of now. Take us into your world today at Plum Property, which is a unique independent brand that you've created for other agents as well. Take us into what is Plum Property and why did you build it?
Sure. So there's two parts to my businesses. There's Plum Property, which is my agency, my regular real estate agency. So after 10 years at an LJ Hooker franchise, I finally decided that my time was done in that office. There was no further growth for me there. And I decided it was better off to go and start my own business. So I was a high-performing agent at the time, completely dominating one particular suburb, but writing about $1 million in GCI back in 2014. Yeah, at that time, I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I'll do it now while I'm young and I've got this market share and I believed in myself. So I basically left this agency and started my own agency in my apartment and, just worked from the ground up, very small, just with my business partner, Dylan, that's still with me today. And we grew that agency over the next 8 years to an agency of 40 people, 20 great agents. We're doing about 400 million in sales each year. And I was a hardcore selling principal for the first 7 years of that business. And at the end of 22 financial year, I decided to hang up the boots in sales. I'd just really done my time And the business was at a point where it could support me to try something new. And I really wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted to start partnering with great agents out there in Australia who also wanted to start their own business, but didn't have the know-how, didn't have maybe the financial support, felt a little bit scared of the whole process. And that really stops a lot of agents from making that move, because it is a big, scary jump to go out on your own and be not just a great selling agent, but now a business owner wearing all these different hats and taking on all these costs. And the uncertainty of it all makes a lot of agents just stay where they are and continue as they are, even though they're not necessarily doing what they want. So I just saw a lot of opportunity there. And so we launched a business called Plum Partners in 2022, where we help agents to create, run and grow their own agency, just like I did when I left my agency and started on my own. And so we provide a whole range of business services, from setup, executing their whole setup, their marketing, advertising, and then providing all their software and back-end processes and administration, so that they can focus on listing and selling as the lead principal and agent whilst they grow their business as well. So it's been a very successful couple of years. We're going to be 3 years old in August this year, 25. We have 37 partners on the network, and I'm loving the growth of it, and I'm loving the journey helping all these new business owners reach their full potential.
How amazing. And as you would know, not everyone suits business ownership, and not everyone suits departing their sales profession, because quite often they're two different professions. And having a hybrid model in between there, where you've got knowledge, you've got support, allows people to be the star of the selling process, yet still promoting that name, promoting that brand. So we've seen quite a few of these pop up over the last 2 years. And that's probably my next line of question. Daniel, what have you learned from this story, this journey from, being the top performing agent in a very powerful brand to, and what you did isn't always recommended to anyone. It is a big jump, and your brain does tick different to the average agent. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in meeting people like you for many, many years, it's not even the financials, it's the lack of stimulation that you could do more, but you've got to do more in a different way. Is that what happened with you?
Yes and no. I would have been content potentially where I was if the owners of the business had a path for me where I could see continuous future growth, both personally and financially. But I was held back, and opportunities that were said to, that was said that they were going to come never came. And so, it was one of those, well, if they're not going to give it to me, then I've got to go make it for myself. So there had to be for me always future growth where I was at, or I was going to go. Now, being partnered with those people, if I thought they were the right crew, I would have done that too. I don't have to be the guy, the face of everything. If there is a pathway where I could collaborate and be, alongside someone, I'd do that as well. But yeah, I'm definitely also one of those guys who continuously wants to evolve. I want to live a life where I feel like I gave it everything. And so, that was part of the reason I had to leave, because that wasn't going to happen where I was at. What I've learned is business ownership does have a lot of extra challenges to it, specifically as you grow a larger team, being a mentor to many staff and handling the staff turnover and budgets and things like that. Certainly challenging. We've got procedures and systems in place to help all of our partners deal with that kind of stuff, and great coaching available, because all of the challenges that I've been through, my partners are going to go through. And so we've got great programs for them to learn from the best.
Observation question for you. After watching the agents you have grow, become a partner, I'll just touch on that. There is a threshold for you to consider someone being suitable to be part of what you do, where I notice in other organizations, it doesn't really matter. If you're ready to go, go. Whereas you're quite selective of who should be a Plum partner. Is that correct?
Absolutely, for two reasons. Number one, it's actually to protect the agent. I actually personally don't think it's a good idea for an agent to go out and start a business when they don't have enough experience or they haven't proven to the market that they can even earn enough income to support a business. A business does cost money if you're going to have employees and things like that, and premises and signage and advertising, all the other costs. I only mentioned a couple. There's many costs to a business. And if an agent's doing, 5 deals a year or making 150 in GCI or something like that, that's not going to be enough to support them if the market turns. It's not going to be enough to support their brand as a name, as an agent, isn't really big enough it hasn't stood the test of time yet. So we do that because we want our agents to succeed. And any agent that thinks that they are making a good move by, being in real estate for 1 year, doing 5 deals and then starting their own brand and thinking that that's going to be more beneficial for them, they're probably wrong. In most instances, that's what I see. So we want to partner with agents that have proved themselves for a number of years, that are earning a GCI minimum of 400. Now that number may even increase soon. And they have a good reputation and a good brand of their own name within an area, so that when they launch, they have that reputation and that database that's going to carry that business through to the next stage. So that's one reason. The other reason is we want to have a network of high performers. There are other models out there similar that offer some similar things to Plum Partners in terms of they're an admin service-based model. However, they just take anyone on, no matter if you do 1 or 2 deals, and they charge subscription fees and things like that. So they're making money every month no matter what, and they'll just take you on. It doesn't really matter. But then you just have a whole network of a couple of high performers with just a whole lot of very average or underperformers. And I don't think as a network, anyone really benefits from that.
Couldn't agree more. And then there's that final part of this real estate world where people suit being in a real estate business with people around them who, I know myself, there's no way I could have done what I did without the talent around me and listening to phone calls and seeing deals come together and have my principal sit with me and explain the listing conversation. There's a time of coachable moments that is so important. And depending on the personality of the person, it's all still going to come back to this next part of our interview, which what does make a great agent, regardless of what package you're on, what deal you've done. Let's get back to this core selling skill of technique, your observations of one being that agent yourself and coming through the ranks to do what you did, and now seeing others succeed and fail. Where do you feel it's got to get back to, as we're not seeing the very quick success that people thought they were going to have in the real estate industry in the last 5 years? It hasn't been as simple as what people thought it would be.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, I think any high performer, real estate or not, it comes down to the best high performers. They have great self-discipline. In real estate, we run our own schedules. Unless you're a sales associate or something like that, no one's checking whether you're in at 9 o'clock and leaving at 5. And if you do, that's on you. You're in a commission-only based industry where you can earn as little or as much as you want. So self-discipline is very, very important. And that can be very hard for some people. They're used to being more followers and just following orders and told what to do and doing tasks that way. So when they're left to their own devices and they have to manage their own time, they can let themselves down. High performers don't let themselves down. Maybe every now and again, but very rarely. They show up every single day. They have bad days as well, but they don't let that stop them from doing all the necessary work to get the leads, to get indoors, to sign more business. And, from that discipline and that hard work to get very, very high performing in real estate, you then have to get really good at growing and nurturing your team and having a very supportive team that can back you with all of the work that goes on with listing and selling and prospecting. And your role needs to change as your team grows to be doing more higher performance activities that the lead agent should do. And that just needs to be managed really, really well. So sort of stepping into more of a leadership role as you grow and your team grows is really important. So that's what you'll see in Australia, all the high performers these days. And I remember going to ARIC back in 2009, Lee, my first few years in real estate. I was in a real estate office and there were 20 agents there. And there was only one agent, which was the agent I worked for, that had a full-time employee on their team, associate. And she was the best agent in the office and she had a full-time employee. And that was a pretty big deal, right? And when I went to ARIC in 2009, my first ARIC, there was a lady on stage and she had 2 full-time assistants. And I thought, oh my goodness, that's incredible. 2 full-time assistants on a team. And she made 700 grand GCI and she was standing on stage at ARIC. And I thought 700K GCI, that is incredible. Mind you, with inflation, that's still worth about 1.2 today. But the difference today, 17 years on, is we see agents that are doing 4 million, 5 million, 6 million across the country with teams of 6, 7, 8. So that is the difference of where the industry has gone in the past 10 years.
What a great answer. And there was so much in that. I was going to unpack a little bit of it. It's interesting, we all reference and need to high-performing agents. And from being a not high-performing agent to the middle ground there, the first big step is to become average. And what I mean by that is, because you're probably thinking, what do you mean average? But if the average agent is doing that, you need to get to average. And then to be above average, you would be doing that. And then to be a high performer, you would be doing that. But there's nothing wrong with understanding I'm not even average. If the average agent in my area is doing X amount of deals per month, I need to get to average. But the train tracks to these stations, you can tell I've just been on the Matt Steinway program. That's just burned in my head from doing that program. But Matt was saying about, once you get on the train tracks, the train stations don't change if you stay on the tracks. And the tracks of consistency, and I loved it in that first part, regardless of where you are now and what numbers you're doing, are you consistent in yourself? Because as you beautifully articulated, you're responsible for you now. No one's chasing you. No one cares if you turn up or not. I remember that from leaving high school and going to TAFE because I had my big important career there of being a plumber, which is probably one of the most important things I ever did in the housing industry. But I remember the difference of a school teacher saying, where are you? Versus a TAFE teacher saying, I don't care if you turn up or not. It's up to you. If you want to fail and not get your license, all on you, not on me. And it's that business maturity moment of, okay, what does a consistent agent do per week? Well, firstly, they understand those AM appointments are going to block the communication piece of claiming doors, following up people, and building upon future business. And getting that 40 connects a day is the base move. And actually, Matt said something in his audio the other day about bookings. He says, move it, don't delete it. And it was such a powerful point of those 40 connects have to happen. Oh, but I can't do it today. But don't delete it, move it. Find a space to make that happen because that's all it's about. And I wonder sometimes, Daniel, if people find being successful boring, meaning you've got to be match fit to just concentrate and do that, what that person needs to do to get to that point and then the next point. You can't just jump it and want to end up at the other end.
100%. And, I heard a good quote the other day. Most successful people and successful people that you see out there, it's not from doing the glamorous shit that you see on Instagram or Facebook. It's by doing boring, mundane shit over and over and over at a high level. And that's what makes you really successful. And I love that quote, move it, don't delete it. Takes me back to those days when I was an agent on my own with no team member. And I just had a goal every month. I only had one goal. I didn't even look at the connects per day or anything like that. For me, I made it really easy. Just 30 face-to-face appraisals in my area every month. That's an average of one a day a month. And I would do that every month without fail. I would get through 30 doors and meet 30 people in my territory so that I could build those relationships. If that took me 100 calls, 200 calls, 300 calls, I didn't count. I didn't care. My goal was to get those appraisals every month. And if I went on holiday for 2 weeks in a month, which I did a few times a year, then, my month would be cut short. So how would I get my 30 appraisals? Well, the month before I would do 40. And then the month after I came back, I would do 40. So that shorter month, I may have only done 20 appraisals or 15 that month because I was away, but I still hit my average of 30 a month every month without fail. And just that one goal alone, Lee, that's all I ever looked at. Just that one goal alone set me up for success in real estate.
I love the simplicity of simplicity. And I say in audio a lot, simple's difficult. Everyone's looking for this fast, quick way to do something, and we hear that a lot. But you've got to fall in love with the routine. You've got to fall in love with the process. And once you get, and I'll give this a term, once you get the patterns to your week right, everything seems to fall into place. So, and for me, it's not about the ideal week. I think a lot of people attempted that and it was like the lemon diet or something, whereas there's patterns to your week. So I know in my week, Mondays are basically an administrative follow-up, chase-up day. Fridays are more of I promised a lot of things to a lot of people, make sure we get those out. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is game days. They are the days that I'm doing my most productive, high-engaged work. And then Saturday, you're reviewing what happened in an incredible week. Sunday, you're having the day off to pull yourself back together, and it starts again. But then there's commitments to the week. So in my world, I've got a commitment of 2 podcasts every week. One's private, one's public. I was on 3, but I'm back to 2 as the other program's finished. In a real estate salesperson's role, I'm going to find a potential seller every day. And I need to find a minimum of 5 a week. If I'm going to go to a team, I need 9 a week. But it's a commitment to do that. And if you can fall in love with your commitments, the numbers do take care of themselves. If you're just focused on where's the quickest dollar going to come from, you'll never make it. You've got to fall in love with that process, that boring repetition of getting your rhythm right. And actually, Christian Arrigo, who I now know has joined Plum, who was my business partner for many, many, many years at Real Estate Academy, we would always have this conversation about people where, Christian was coaching and helping so many people on my behalf. And Christian would say, I spoke to Brett Andreessen today. I go, how's it going? He's found his groove. He's really worked out service area. He's worked out this. He's worked out that. And finding your business groove is what I'm referring to, and falling in love with that this is what I do on a weekly basis. These are my patterns. These are my commitments. The numbers will take care of themselves. And even in some of my big Queensland businesses up there, they've moved their measurements or the metrics from not how many appraisals or sales, but how many doors did you claim this week? Because if that doesn't happen, the others won't happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with where you're coming from. And look, your flow will change over time. And you just need to identify what is your flow for what position you're in now. When you first start out, you're an agent, you're on your own. You've got to do all the cold calls, the open homes, the CMAs, the vendor meetings. Everything's on your plate. So your daily tasks and goals will be different. When you have a team of 3 or 4, they'll completely change. You won't be doing those cold calls anymore. Your team will be doing those. So that will become their flow. Your flow will end up being, I need to be in the lounge room of at least one person who's selling their property each weekday or something like that. That's not going to happen when you're a brand new agent. That's just too far-fetched for one agent on their own to be in a living room of a seller every single day. It's not going to happen. So yeah, finding that groove is important and being aware that it will change over time.
Now, for the 31 minutes that you and I have been speaking, I haven't once mentioned social media, marketing, video, or anything. However, I do want to bring that up because you are a creative and you found a passion in video where you got to use a new communication channel. Take us into the thinking behind the Plum Video series.
Yeah, well, social media. Well, where did it start? So I was doing videos when social media was sort of pretty new and we were doing videos, but they would only go on realestate.com. And I was doing funny-ish videos. I was trying to be funny anyway, but they would only go on realestate.com. So who would see them? Just the people who went to the ad on realestate.com, which could be, 1,000 people. And then Instagram and Facebook came out and then you could, boost ads and things like that. So I started to do more creative property videos and boost them around Facebook and specifically target my area. Because I did quite unique videos, they went sort of, viral. I don't want to pump my tires up too much, but, let's say locally viral. And, it really helped me to build a bit of a name and get people to get a feel for who I am and just know my personality a bit more. And it really did help me. I'm not going to say that people called me up every day and said, I see your videos, they're awesome, I want to sell my house. But what it did do is when I would meet people at open homes or, call random people in the neighborhood for appraisals, they would already know who I am a lot of the time because they've seen my videos. And so they were already quite warm to me. And so that's where it really, really helped. And then in the listing presentations, I could show that my videos were actually bringing more buyers to the property through the clicks that they would generate that would take people through to the full ad and things like that. And so if you learn to sell the benefits of the video, not only does it help the client, but it also helps your profile because you're just getting yourself out there more. So I really leaned into that a lot because not many agents were doing it at the time. And whilst I was an agent, I just continued that because I just found it gave me great success and it really helped to make my agency look a bit different to others, make our brand look a little bit more fun-loving, everyday, family style agency and not just the perfectly crisp, agency that everyone seems to go for. And it worked for us. So that's sort of where that came from. And over the years, now that I've stopped doing property sales, I no longer can do those property videos. So I found other avenues to make great content. One of those being my own podcast, which is an educational podcast called the Get Keen Podcast. So if anyone's interested in listening to another very educational real estate podcast, look up the Get Keen Podcast on Spotify or Apple or whatever and enjoy, please.
And Daniel, we'll put that in our show notes so people do need to listen to that podcast. My final question for you, as someone who's achieved many, many things in this wonderful industry, and I love the real estate industry today more than I ever have due to the wonderful changes and things that we're seeing coming in and the professionalism of the agents that, many, many weeks now, I've got all these kids on the bench. They're 22 years of age. They're about to go and work with a Lisa Novak or a Matt Steinway or whoever is the lead agent. And the skill set that they've got and the words that they're using, I'm just like, wow, look at what's available now at 22 compared to then. And we were all very fortunate that the Real Estate Hot Topics program had all those incredible people appear and share their time that people could profit from their knowledge. But within all this is my question. What are you passionate about for the future that excites you about what you're going to do next? What are you going to do to progress?
Oh, that's a really good question, putting me on the spot there, Lee. What am I really excited about for the future?
Passionate about?
Well, for one, I'm very excited to take Plum Partners to 100 partners. So we have 37 amazing business owners that have partnered with us, and I'm very keen to get that to 100 and within the next couple of years. So that's sort of a goal of mine by the end of 2027 to have 100 partners on board. For the industry, I'm curious as to where AI is going to take us. I am unsure what parts of the job exactly are going to be consumed by AI, but I do imagine a lot of calls and things like that, it will be available for AI to assist in that. Whether or not it will take over, it will need to be very good, because letting AI do calls may miss very good opportunities, as it doesn't have the ability to build rapport and really push that extra level as you can as a human. So, but, I've been thinking about it. I feel like in a few years, we will be able to have programs where you come back from an open home, you've had 20 groups through, and you can just hook your CRM up to an AI caller, which will dial all the people that came through the open home, and it will run through a basic list of questions for those people. Hey, thank you for coming to such and such property today. This is Daniel Lee's AI agent, just asking you some initial questions before the agent calls you. Are you interested in this property? Do you want to be contacted back today? A bunch of questions that can filter through all of the leads and then generate a report for the agent to say, of all the 25, here's your 5 best who are most interested. These 10 didn't pick up, whatever. And so it makes the agent's job a little bit easier to then just go straight to the top and work their way down on that list on the importance level. Things like that, which will make our job easier and quicker and allow us to take on more business. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. So I think I'm excited for those sorts of things.
Yeah, AI is wonderful for getting time back, knowing how to use it. You do have to study it. I know when it first came out, I mentioned this a few times on air now, that, I was cranky. It was like a covers band that it could just grab everyone's stuff and make a song of its own. But when you're the original artist, it is amazing. So you and I today recording, I will then grab this file. It goes into my podcasting software. It rips it saying, these are all the key points. This is all the possible headings. That's a wonderful solution. But you and I are the artists today. We're not searching the world for something we didn't write or do. And I think used correctly, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're fortunate enough that it'll be a long time before our entire job could be replaced by AI, unlike some other industries that will seriously be fighting to, keep their jobs alive.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Daniel Lee, absolute honour to do your interview. I'd heard so much about you, and obviously of late with many things going on in your world. Congratulations on the podcast, Plum Property, and I'd love you to return back in the future on the program on a topic of choice.
Mate, it's been an honour to be here, Lee. As I said, thinking back to my early days, listening to you and John McGrath on all those hot topics, and now to be sitting here doing an interview with you, that makes me feel pretty special. So thanks for having me on. I'd be glad to come back another time. And hopefully the listeners got a lot out of this.
Thank you for joining us.
Cheers.